So congratulations to Castle, Andrew Warren, and 2020's Wolfwalkers for being the debut class of the Justin and Tyler Movie Awards Hall of Fame for 2021. We're going to be making this obviously an annual tradition with the Movie Awards. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, officially to the 2021 Justin and Tyler Movie Awards. And in this video, of course, we deal with our classic, our patented at this point, Miscellaneous Movie Awards. Awards you're pretty well not going to see anywhere else on any other award show, and that's what makes us special. So in this video, we are going to be handing out awards for the 3 movies apiece that we expected more from in 2021 and 3 apiece that we expected less from in 2021. We're also going to give out an award, 1 movie apiece that we can't believe we loved and can't believe we hated. And then we've got the stuff at the end. We've got 2 that we have given out for the last couple of years. Those, of course, being Tyler's Castle Award and my award for I Don't Get It. And then we have 1 award that we each give an award for, and those are the brand new ones for this year. We won't spoil them quite yet. We're going to lay them on you as soon as we're ready to give them. So we're going to kick things off with the awards for the movies that we expected more from and the movies that we expected less from in 2021. Once again, 3 apiece, and we'll be going back and forth. So I'm going to kick things off with the first movie that I expected more from in 2021, and this for me is going to be House of Gucci, which might seem like a weird choice because why would you have expected more from a movie about the Gucci family? And I think what I really looked at was I looked at the cast. You're talking about Lady Gaga, who I thought has been in limited work. I thought her work in movies has been really, really good.
Your boyfriend.
Adam Driver is my boyfriend. Al Pacino's in this movie. Like, there's a really Jared Leto. For everything people can say about Jared Leto, he's had some performances that are just tremendous. Yeah. With that cast, directed by Ridley Scott. Yeah. My expectations for this movie, and look, this is a movie that I didn't dislike. I didn't dislike this movie nearly as much as a lot of other people wound up disliking this movie. That was not me. I enjoyed House of Gucci, but I had my expectation towards a certain level of quality, and the level of quality that I got certainly did not match what I was expecting to see. I didn't really know what the story was going to be like, but again, at the end of that movie, I'm like, I don't feel the way I thought I was going to feel coming out of that movie, given the cast and the director. So that's the angle I had to take on that one. So House of Gucci is my first winner for this award.
The expectations are insane with this one because, again, you have, like you said, a movie about the Guccis, which is like, who cares? But then you have an interesting cast that could, somewhat go either way, because there's Jared Leto who you're like, whatever, up and down. And then Lady Gaga, she's only done like the 1 role, I think, before. Right?
No, there's only been a couple.
There's been a couple, yeah. So you don't really know where this is going to go. And then on top of that, you had the reception for it, which, like, some people love it, and some people despise it.
Yeah.
And so the expectations, which what we're talking about here, is really interesting for that one. So that one is a good pick to start it off.
Yeah, just not. I don't think it would be a movie that people would have expected me to hit him with right out of the gate. So
I really like that.
I'm going to start with that.
I really like that pick.
Yeah.
Okay, my pick isn't nearly as interesting because it's considerably less, I guess, mainstream or whatever, but it's Dead Pigs.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Now, this is a movie, this is why I picked it, because these awards, we judge based on expectations. I've known about this movie since 2018 when it hit film festivals. Okay. And whenever I would think about it, I would look it up to see if it was released, and it wasn't, and then it wasn't, and then it wasn't, and then it just popped up one day, and I was like, oh, there it is! Like, I've been waiting for this. So that's like an expectation too, because you wait 3 years for a movie from the moment you hear of it, and you know it's been released, right? Because it's in festivals and it's a cheater. In case people are wondering, well, it was 2018. It's like, no, it's a cheater. It counts as this year.
We have a very loose definition of cheater for the purposes of our awards.
It might actually be the biggest cheater that we've ever included in this. 3 years, maybe. It had an interesting premise. I waited the 3 years for it, and also it was directed by Kathy Yon, who did Birds of Prey, which I didn't love. But I wanted to see what Kathy did before she got tapped for a much, much bigger movie. And I didn't hate Dead Pigs. There was moments that I quite enjoyed. It was a fine movie all in all. But again, it's the Expectations Award. How can I not... Like, this movie, having to wait 3 years, if it didn't amaze me, then I feel like this is a clear case of I expected more from this.
Big time. I mean, look, when you think about it, like, that's like... 3 years, like, spoilers, we're like 36, 37 years old. So, I mean, you're talking about 8 to 9% of your life. You've been waiting for this movie. You really want to put it into context like that? And then it's like, oh man, if it, like, to your point, if it doesn't totally blow you away almost, it can't help but fall short of what you were hoping for.
Right, and like some people would be like, well, we've waited longer for movies like, I don't know, The Incredibles, but as far as I know, like, The Incredibles 2 wasn't announced.
Right.
Like this was out.
And
this was in the wild for 3 years.
So my second movie this year that I expected more from in 2021 was Old. And Old came in with a fairly decent amount of hype. Leading up to when I was going to see it, because I mean, it's like it's M. Night Shyamalan movies are like event movies almost.
Yeah,
it's like when he puts one out, it's like, okay, regardless of what you feel about his work, and I feel like his work has been tremendously uneven as a career as a whole, and more often than not, and which was the case in this movie as well, I felt like it was the writing that let him down. It wasn't necessarily his direction, but I found the writing in the movie let him down a lot, and that filtered into really uneven performances. I just plain didn't have fun, and I think it's the first time that I've watched an M. Night Shyamalan movie that I didn't at least have fun. Even if I didn't love the movie, like The Village or Devil or stuff like that he's done, I've at least had fun with either the premise or the way the premise was executed upon, whatever it would happen to be. So my expectation for this movie is whether I like it or I don't like it, I'm gonna have fun. And I almost felt like the movie was a slog. Like, aside from the moments where I could laugh at either the intentional silliness or the couple of moments of silliness that weren't really intentional, and I don't think it was what he was going for, but I was like, oh boy, okay.
I love your picks so far.
Yeah?
Because you're completely right about like M. Night and all this stuff. And I've said this probably in a few videos, actually, where, I'm just repeating what you said, it's the writing that lets his movies down every single time he releases a turd. I'm not even saying Old is a turd, because I ain't giving away what I thought about it, but that's what always always lets his movies down, is the writing. And you're right, it's like, I always want an M. Night movie to be great, and that was a movie that I was quite excited for.
Yeah.
So my number 2 is a cheater pick, I think, technically, but it's Saint Maud.
Oh, this is one that you flat out mentioned this to me very early in 2021. You gave me like a short list of movies.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, it was like January, February of this year, and Saint Maud was one of the first ones that you mentioned.
Because here's the thing, right? It was being upped to be a great movie, and I know you don't get it when it comes to Hereditary, but the thing is, and I mentioned Hereditary for a reason, is this is an A24 joint.
Yes.
And the expectation is mostly based on the fact that it's A24, and they're a company that it's always worth seeking out their stuff, even if it's not all great. They're doing something interesting within the industry. And Saint Maud, and that wouldn't be necessarily enough to put it on this list if Saint Maud wasn't also getting great reviews. So I'm like, okay, cool. An A24 movie being compared to Hereditary, I'm in.
Yeah.
It was okay. Like,
it was there. It was a movie.
Maybe like low tier good.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, but never like more like, yeah, it was good. Not, oh, that's so good, right? It's not like you and Wolf Walkers. It's so good.
It's so good.
But yeah, that's it. Basically based on the A24 thing. And I will say something though about A24 that I noticed. They released I didn't see all their movies, but they released a bunch of movies that I felt this way about this year.
Ooh.
And that's weird for me because there's generally some A24 movies that I really, really love, and I don't think there was this year.
A24 operating on about a 4.5 out of 10 all year.
Well, maybe a
little.
Well, I don't know. With the bad movies they released, maybe. They released some good ones. One might even come up. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. Saint Maud is my number 2.
Okay. Yeah, no, as soon as you said it, I was like, I hearkened back to that list you gave me very early in the year, and I was like, oh, I know Saint Maud was on there. My final recipient in 2021 for the movie that I expected more from is King Richard. Now, I'm going to spoil a tiny little thing here. I'm going to spoil that this movie is in my top 30. That's the only thing I'm going to spoil. So,
Number 1.
Did not dislike this movie in the least. Not at all. In fact, it's rated in the top 30. So it will show up later. But my problem with King Richard, and if you don't know, King Richard is the movie starring Will Smith, talks about Serena and Venus Williams, the tennis players. This movie dips between masterful and baffling. Like, there's not a ton of in between. It is very peak and valley. So my expectations going into this, first of all, I kind of expected it was going to be a movie about the Williams sisters. And it kind of wound up not being a movie about the Williams sisters, more so a movie about their father. So, but my expectations going in was, cool, we're going to get to see a Serena and Venus Williams biopic. And that's not at all what we got. And what I got was, again, a movie I really enjoyed, but not at all the movie that I was expecting to see. So that's this is like the purest definition of I expected more, which is I expected a completely different movie than the one that I got. So that's why King Richard winds up probably, if I really had to give it a numeric, that would be my number 1 movie that I expected more from this year.
I don't have a lot to add about the quality of the movie because I did see it and we'll talk about it, I guess, later, so I'll just leave it for that. But in terms of the expectations, I mean, I don't know that I saw trailers or anything before, but I find it interesting that you put it in due to expectations, because the name is King Richard, though.
It is, but you know what? If you watch trailers for that movie,
does show
all the trailers about the girls playing tennis.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
Almost all of it is about the girls playing tennis.
So that makes sense to me.
It's almost like if we had a bait and switch award, which might be a good idea for an award next year, King Richard would have been the bait and switch.
All right, you know what? Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, my last pick is Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, which is like a foreign flick. And this is only a high expectation because the premise looked like my jam. So essentially, the main character comes across his monitor, I think in his room, or in our room, I can't remember, and it shows him in the future from 2 minutes. Like 2 minutes into the future. Cool. So like that could be fun.
Yeah,
right?
I like that premise.
So the whole thing is like, they watch video of themselves doing things and it gets all confusing. But it wasn't a bad movie. It was okay, but the thing is, it was like a little over an hour long. I think it wasn't very long. And the first like 20-30 minutes when they're kind of discovering this whole thing, it's kind of a slog because essentially they're just watching themselves and so you're kind of like seeing scenes get repeated a little bit from a different angle, but you're essentially watching the same stuff get said. Like you watch something, then you watch it get said again, and it's a bit of a slog for the first 20-30 minutes. So I thought I was going to actually hate it, but then it lets itself get a little crazier and funny and entertaining, but it still doesn't end up being a great movie, so that's why it's on this. But I do got to say one line, because I highly doubt this is going to come up again unless you have
the shock
seen
of the year.
Yeah, this is your number 1 pick. So the main character is watching. All right, he likes this girl, and him in the future, or he's being told to like ask her out, and him in the future is like, yeah, she said yes when I asked her out, so go do it, right? So he's like, oh, cool, the future, yeah, I'm gonna get the girl I want. So we go and he asks her out, she says no. So the future self lied to him, right? So there's a scene that he's like sitting off all dejected at a table or whatever. Right. And it cuts to him, and he's so mad at his future self, he goes, I was tricked, and I did the trick. And it's my favorite line of the whole year. And that's when that movie was at its best. Now, if the first 20-30 minutes of them establishing that would have been as good and as clever and as funny, then this wouldn't be on this list. But once I heard of the premise, I was like, this shot, like, to near the top of the movies I wanted to see, and it couldn't live up to that, and that's sad. It's not a fun pick. It's not as fun as my other two picks, I don't think, or your picks even, but I had to put it on there.
Yeah, that's a heck of a premise.
It is.
If I would have seen that, which maybe I did, sounds like it would be one that would have probably landed on this as well. But that's a heck of a premise. I really like.
I know. I like the premise so much, and that's basically what the expectation comes from. All right, now we're gonna move on to I Expected Less, and my first pick is Private Chat. Or PVT Chat.
Oh, you saw that.
Yeah,
this year.
I watched it only because you said it had some interesting parasocial commentary.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I thought it was going to be like a bad erotic horror, and like I'm not sitting here saying I love this movie,
Right.
but I am saying that, well, I expected less.
Right.
Even with your recommendation, I was like, this is not my jam, but I could see why you were more into it because you're an idiot.
Pervert.
Yeah. He's a pervert. No, you are. Like, something erotic or whatever just gels more with you. Because I'm afraid of sex. No, I don't know. But it was more your thing. But I did like it, and I really did not expect to. So.
Nice. Oh, I'm glad that was a movie that you wound up seeing, because in that weird early year haze where it felt like I was watching nothing but low budget productions from the UK, that was one that actually kind of stood out, and I was like, oh, this is competent at the very least. Like, this doesn't suck out loud. So I was like, all right, cool. Well, that's a surprise. I'm glad you wound up seeing that.
Yeah, I think that might be the only one on this part of the list that's of interest.
Okay.
But it's okay.
We'll see. My first selection here for movies that I expected less from in 2021 is Encanto. And I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. And here's the reason that I expected less from it. I had no real motivation to see that movie. When I saw the poster, and even when I saw the trailers, I draw a pretty firm line when it comes to Disney movies. There are the ones on this side of the line, which I know instantly I really want to watch and I'm pretty sure I'm going to love. Your Zootopias, your Cocos, and the like. And then you have this side of the line that has like your Inside Outs, your Onward, stuff like that like I see it and I'm like, cool, if I see that, great. If I don't see it, I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it because it looks like it's going to be okay. And that's where I put Encanto. I'm like, I'm sure this is going to be a good movie because it's Disney. Yeah. So I'm sure it would be a movie that I would enjoy. But if I don't see it, whatever. Then after watching that movie, I'm like, I'm so glad that I am an idiot. I'm so glad that I was like, maybe you're wrong about this and maybe you should watch it. So I did wind up prioritizing watching it here towards the latter part of the year. And I so expected it to be less than what it wound up being, especially when it comes to like the music and the soundtrack, which is such like in terms of the movie soundtracks this year, in like, you know, it's sort of in the full context of the year in cinema, a lot of people have considered that like a nuclear bomb among soundtracks this year. So it was so good, and again, one of those movies that I certainly didn't expect to, and I didn't like it quite as much as like the Cocos and the Zootopias and the really high level stuff from Disney. Didn't like it quite as much as that, but it was certainly more than what I expected it to be.
Disney brings with it some expectations in general, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I might as well spoil. I didn't see it.
Oh!
I really had like no interest, and so I left it up to one of my coworkers who's like the biggest Disney fan I think you'll ever see.
Okay.
And she went to see it. And she comes back, and I was like, "How was it?" She's like, "It was okay." And I'm like, "Look, if she's saying it's okay, and I'm not really like super into seeing it anyway. If she would have came back and would have been like, 'Oh, that was awesome,' I probably would have watched it." So my second selection is continuing with the Disney Jungle Cruise, right? That's Disney.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And my expectations for this is weird because it has my girl Emily Blunt, one of my favorite actresses. It has our boy The Rock.
Absolutely.
And you would think like, why would I expect less? It's like, honestly, because to me it reeked of like the Jumanji or the first Pirates of the Caribbean, where I looked at them and I was like, these are probably not that good, but they all ended up being good. Yeah. Although the first Pirates is actually, I would consider a great movie.
I would agree with that.
But Jumanji, the first one, I didn't see the second, ended up being fun. We've talked about it before.
Big time.
And this was fun.
Yep.
I didn't love it. Yep. Like, spoiler, it's not on my list, but it's competing with like 168 other movies or something.
Exactly. My number 2 selection, by the way, is Jungle Cruise.
Oh,
so
snap.
nailed
There
it.
we go.
Basically copy what he just said and paste it, because that's the exact angle that I was taking on it as well. It does give off such vibes. It's almost feels like a spiritual companion to that first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, because it feels exactly the same.
Right.
Not that it's telling the same story, but the feeling of it is almost exactly the same, which makes sense because Pirates of the Caribbean was just based off of a ride.
Right.
Like, they just took that ride concept, we're going to make it a movie. And the same thing with Jungle Cruise. We're going to ride concept, we're going to make it into this movie. And again, the undeniable chemistry between Emily Blunt and The Rock, which is, again, I'm like, I did not expect these two to have the chemistry that they have.
But then at the same time, looking back, you kind of feel stupid for not expecting that.
I guess, yeah.
Because, like, it was smart, and I don't know if this comes up later, so I'm just going to say this. The movie was smart enough to know that, okay, The Rock needs to just be charming and cool. Emily Blunt, you give her the heavy lifting.
Yep.
And they did.
Yeah, that's exactly
and that's what they did. And they just, and it just helps that Emily Blunt especially could do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, my final selection is Run, Hide, Fight.
Ooh, okay.
Admittedly a terrible name, just an atrocious title for a movie. Honestly, I expected less just due to the critical reception of it, because like I kind of hate to do this, but it was released by the Daily Wire, you know, Ben Shapiro's conservative network thing, right? And I hate to do this because I feel like that's got to be part of the reception against it.
I'm sure
from the critics anyway, because I'm pretty sure that if you look at it on like Rotten Tomatoes, it's like audience reception is high, critic is low, and I'm not saying that's the only thing. Like, you can just hate the movie just because. That's fine. And I don't think the movie was amazing, and this isn't an original thing, but it was basically Die Hard in a school with a villain that's kind of like a lesser version of Heath Ledger's Joker. And none of these are original to me, like observations. But I just expected less due to the critical reception, and it ended up being kind of fun. And I can't remember the lead actress's name, but she put in a good performance, and I was entertained. And I just kind of wonder how much of it is like liberal bias in the Hollywood sphere, like, because it's really not a bad movie. If Ben Shapiro wasn't involved, I don't know that it would have got the same like anger, not anger, but hatred towards it. Maybe I'm wrong. Like,
I mean, you could you could be wrong, or you could be right.
It just seems awfully suspicious. You know what I mean? I'm not even a conservative. I just watch the movie as a movie. Like, I saw some critics say something like it's like pissing in the river of national pain or whatever because it's about a school shooting.
Right.
And I'm like, we used to be able to have movies like Elephant. I don't know if you saw it with Gus Van Sant. And we used to be able to just have that. And it was like an artistic, great movie, and nobody would bat an eye. And now all of a sudden it's like, we're not allowed to have a movie about a school shooting?
Right.
Like, why? Why can't we? I mean, the villain gets her comeuppance, and the heroine, she wins.
Right. So yeah, it's I think you may have a point. It is certainly an interesting conversation to say, like, in a speculative hypothetical world, what would have happened if they would have released that movie but made no mention of the fact that the Daily Wire was behind it?
Yeah, I would love to see that world, just to see.
And to close the award, my final recipient of the movie I expected less from in 2021 is a movie called Killer Therapy. So it's a low-budget, US-based horror about this sociopathic kid who basically is abused throughout most of his childhood by his therapists. So then as he grows up, he winds up snapping, and it turns into like a slasher flick, basically, where it's this kid taking revenge on the therapists that had abused him in the past. And I didn't expect this low budget, like, and this thing starts with like major Halloween vibes. And in a year that actually had a Halloween movie, it was just like, oh, I recognize this because they just straight up ripped off John Carpenter. And I'm like, I'm okay with that, because the start of this movie is like, ooh, this feels like a Halloween movie. And again, full on, this was during that time of the year, early in the year, where I was watching a lot of garbage. There's a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
Because again, we were careening recklessly towards another like full-scale lockdown with everything that was going on, and I'm like, not a lot of movies coming out right now. Oh, look at this. Originally, I thought it was one of those low-budget UK horrors, but I'm like, oh no, this is an American one. But just the actual quality of it, even like the performance in the main actor was just like, oh, this has all the trademarks of those bad movies, but it definitely is not one of those bad movies. And it surprised me the level of quality and consistency that it actually wound up having. So Killer Therapy is the one that was probably one of the surprises of the year for me.
This is my #1 movie of the year.
That would be dope. That would be so amazing.
I wish it could be, just to make you happy. I might have seen this mentioned, actually, but I mean, you look at horror movies and you think they're going to be junk, but this is why sometimes you just slap on a movie that you think might be junk, because you find a gem, or at least a movie that's like decent and like worth your time.
Yeah, and I think this movie was only like an hour and 32 minutes or something, so it was like part of it was the length of it. It's like, I can fit this movie in before I go to work.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason that I watched it when I did, and I was like, oh, crap, this is actually good. I kind of have to pay more attention to this. It's actually a pretty high quality. So, Killer Therapy. I'll also point out the ending there about Killer Therapy. It has a really, really satisfying ending where basically the kid gets everything that he wants.
Good.
So, and it's a very bloody, slashery end of the movie, and it's very satisfying. So, with that, we've gone over the movies that we expected more from and the ones that we expected less from. Now, let's get into the ones we loved and the ones we hated. My award recipient here in 2021 for the movie that I can't believe I loved was Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, I can't believe I loved it basically because what I had heard originally, from the little bit that I had heard before I actually got to see the movie, was, oh man, this movie's a lot of fan service. This is like, it's fan service all over the place. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not like a dyed-in-the-wool Ghostbusters fan. Like, I like Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I don't dislike them in any way, but I'm like, man, I'm not like somebody that can quote the original movie. Like, I'm not that person. So I'm like, okay, if this is going to be really fan servicey, maybe this winds up not being a movie for me. And that's kind of what a lot of people were saying. Like, oh, if you're not a big Ghostbusters fan, you're not going to like this very much, or it's not going to be for you. And I'm like, at the end of that movie, when I came out, I said to myself, there's a ton in that movie that I love. Like, it's witty and snappy dialogue. I just thought the way they told the story was tremendously interesting. And yeah, sure, it's fan servicey, but it also isn't fan service that leaves you in the dust. It gives you enough background on what they're being fan servicey towards that it's if there's such a thing, and I know there's such a thing, if there's such a thing as like inclusive fan service, it feels like that's what this movie was. There was nothing that really flew a million miles over my head as somebody that doesn't really subscribe to fan service of Ghostbusters. I thought the movie was super fun. I thought the movie was super thoughtful. It's got a ton of great characters. The podcast character steals every friggin' scene that he's in. He's so fantastic. He might be the most entertaining part of the entire movie. And I was just like, this is one of the surprises of the year that I adored this movie. So Ghostbusters Afterlife wins my award.
I think they almost needed to be fan service after the last one.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even hate the last one. I didn't think it was great, but I was mildly entertained by it.
Right.
And I think they needed this, because the thing is, has there been a great Ghostbusters since the first one? Because I don't think people really care for the second one, or do they?
I don't know. If we were more deep into the fandom, we could probably answer that. But to my limited knowledge, no.
Yeah, so it's been almost 40 years since like a great one. So it's good. It's good that this one was great.
Absolutely.
So I gotta be honest here, for I can't believe I loved and hated, I don't love my picks. Because I have a harder time with these two than the expected more and expected less. Because I guess I'm just not that surprised that I love or hate a movie. And I don't even love this movie, but I did quite enjoy it. But anyway, it's the Sparks Brothers. The documentary about Sparks by Edgar Wright.
I couldn't find this.
I watched it mostly because of Edgar Wright.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I can't believe I loved it. I mean, I rated it respectfully, so I do like it. I didn't care about the band. So I'm not the kind of guy who's going to watch a documentary about a band that I have no invested interest in whatsoever.
Right.
I'm just not that guy. I don't care about learning more about a band that I have no experience with whatsoever. If I've heard a song, I didn't know it was them, I wouldn't remember it. And because of the way it was shot, and the fact that honestly they are quite interesting guys creatively and their whole personality, and so then you just team that up with Edgar Wright, who does understand music and music in film and all that stuff, and you got a documentary that, while I don't technically love it, I certainly enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than I expected to. So
That's
I can't
great.
believe I loved it.
Very cool. Yeah, I like I said, I looked for it in the limited places that I look for these things, and didn't find it a couple of times. I was looking for it, so I was like, all right, I'm not going to see this one this year. That's fine. But cool. I'm glad it wound up resonating. And again, the whole reason I wanted to see it too was like, oh, Edgar Wright's attached to this. I really want to see what Edgar Wright does with this kind of format. So good. I'm glad you got to see it. I'm glad it impacted you that much.
So my pick for I Can't Believe I Hate It, again, isn't a movie that I necessarily hate. I just don't recommend watching it, and it surprised me, but it's Annette.
Oh.
So there's a few reasons. I really have grown to like your boyfriend Adam Driver quite a bit too, especially in a role like this. So he had that. I mean, I'm not as in love with Marion Cotillard as you are, but you know, I think I remember mentioning this movie to you earlier, actually being like, this has both of your people in it.
Yeah.
But really, it's because it's by a director I admire, Leos Carax, I think it's pronounced, or Leos Carax. He did Holy Motors, like, I don't know how many years ago it's been now, and I love that movie. And I don't know if that was the last movie he did, but anyway, it was a director expectation for me, where, like, I don't even love musicals, but he was doing it, and he used music really well in Holy Motors stuff, so I expected quite a bit from this. There's a lot of talent in this movie, and it was received really well, and I just didn't really like it that much. So that's why. But yeah, mostly on there's so much talent, I guess. That's why I can't believe I hate it. Because I shouldn't hate a movie with this much going for it.
Right.
You know what I mean? This should have been the movie where I'm like, I don't really like musicals, but I love this one.
And my selection this year for the movie that I can't believe I hated, it's funny that you mentioned earlier in the show that like something that has like an eroticism twist to it, I'm much more receptive to, which is 100% accurate, and that goes back years. My selection this year is a film called Cam Girls.
Okay.
And this is a low-budget UK, it's not a horror, obviously, but it tells the story of these three women in a pandemic lockdown who basically use the internet to explore various aspects of their sexuality. And, like, that seems like a really interesting premise to me. Whether it's, you know, a high-polished budget, like, I don't need to see Scarlett Johansson in a movie like this.
But I would like to.
But I would like to. But, I don't need that. Like, this can be any budget because you're exploring people. You're exploring interrelationships. And this was one of the most boring things that I've watched all year. The performances in them were trite, completely unconvincing. It's completely unsexy. So in a movie that it's like, you're talking about like one girl who is in lockdown and she's complaining to her boyfriend, I don't know why you don't support me more when I think about my ex as we're having sex. Like, it's a bizarre movie. It's just a strange film. And in a way, I almost kind of appreciate it for that fact, because you could argue it as a reflection of the sexual mind, which is all over the place. But really, I think it's just bad filmmaking. Like, I think it's just a bad script, poorly performed, and completely unsexy. So that's why Cam Girls, it was low-hanging fruit. It should have been a movie that I was at least interested in, and by the end I'm like, I'm so bored of this sex movie. I can't believe that this wound up being the movie that I disliked this much this year.
It sounded so familiar to me that I thought that I might have actually watched it. But then as you talked, I'm like, I don't remember any of this. So it must have just been a movie that came up and I was like, no.
Yeah. Probably something that, it might have even come up in conversation with you and I.
The thing is, like, movies that take place in a pandemic, that's like almost a turnoff for me now. I understand that due to the nature of the world, some movies, you want to make a movie so you kind of have to set it in that context. I mean, maybe less so now in some places that aren't like as locked down. But whenever I see it, I'm just like, we're not even out of the...
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird. Like, it turns me off. I've seen some pandemic movies. But anyway, whatever.
And now we come to two more very familiar awards, and we're going to start with my award for I Don't Get It. This, of course, very blatantly being an award for a movie that I don't get it. I don't get the conversation. Like, I don't get what the conversation is around the movie. Like, the popular conversation around a movie, I see a movie almost completely differently than that, or it's just plain Justin don't get it, and Justin ain't gonna get it, apparently. So my winner for this award this year for my I Don't Get It movie is Nobody. Nobody. And
okay, let's go.
It's funny because I don't dislike this movie. I like how Bob Odenkirk plays this character.
Yeah.
I don't like the character.
Right.
And it's got nothing to do with how Bob Odenkirk is playing it. I just don't like the character. And I don't look at Nobody, and putting the John Wick comparisons aside as much as you possibly can, I just don't see how this movie winds up being almost like the revolution in this genre that people are talking about it like it is.
Okay.
And so that's sort of the area that I attacked this from. A movie that I thought was entertaining, that I thought was relatively enjoyable for what it was, despite the fact that I don't particularly like the character. Once again, no disrespect or discredit to Bob Odenkirk. But I don't know, I didn't get it. I didn't get what I saw was, what I felt was like overwhelming love for this. And people that would almost like compare it to kind of nudge the John Wick conversation back in there, that would almost like compare it favorably to John Wick. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But to even put that to the side for a minute, I just didn't see how this was refreshing within the genre whatsoever. It has some interesting ideas, but just not what so many people seem to make it of. So Nobody is my winner for I Don't Get It.
So I think in previous years I've disagreed with you on most of your picks. I think the one that I did was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think the other ones, because there was Hereditary, there was The Hunt, and then there's this one. Is that it?
I think so.
So I guess I disagree a little. I disagree a little bit, but on the context, well, I don't actually know. I don't even think I disagree, because on the context of what you're saying of the conversation around it and people upping it to be this magnificent, like, fresh take or whatever you said about it. If they're saying that, like, I didn't listen. I just sort of, I was just like, this sounds like a fun movie, I'll watch it, and then I left it at that. I thought it was an 8 out of 10. It was a very good movie that I enjoyed. But if they're saying that this is like a refreshing take and I'm basically a masterclass, like a John Wick type of thing, then I don't get it either.
Yeah.
Because it's not that. It's fun. He's good in the role. It's fun. The action sequences are not as good as a John Wick, but they're fun because he kind of gets beat up more and it's messier.
And the movie definitely, it's not without its charm. Like, not at all. But, and maybe that's me listening to the wrong people.
No, you might be right. I just didn't pay attention to the dialogue around it at all. So, like I said, if that's how the conversation was, and I saw it a little bit on reception of the audience and stuff, then I agree. I agree with you. Okay, so now we move on to the Castle Award. Now, just to put you on the spot, we won't take up too much time with this, but do you have a guess?
If I had to guess, it'd be Peter Rabbit 2.
See, but then you'd be wrong, because it's the drummer bunny from Caveat, which isn't an amazing movie. Look, here's the thing. I considered giving it to Petey Rab, but it's too obvious.
Seems very obvious,
It's too obvious. I love Peter Rabbit. but it's too obvious. So I gotta read a little something that I wrote in my notes here just so I can get the wording right. So far, I've given the Castle Award on the grounds of character development, symbolism, philosophy, and plot development. It's safe to say that not only is the Castle Award the industry standard for measuring success, but it is also the most versatile award in movie history. So to add to the diversity, we have this haggard and creepy-looking bunny with a drum. Now, when I watch this movie, it's like a horror movie, and there's this like a little bunny that whenever there's like a spirit around or whatever, it starts like drumming.
Oh, cool.
So I've seen him described as either a warning of evil spirits or a conjurer of them. Because it's not abundantly clear. I actually thought he was a warning, but when a rabbit senses danger, they thump. Now he isn't thumping, but he's drumming. It's kind of the same thing. So I don't know, I feel like that's part of bunnydom, and I should give it to him. So now I'm awarding the Castle Awards on the grounds of, like, paranormal awareness, I guess. I don't know, it's becoming even more the most versatile award in the entire industry. There was no award.
No, nothing that comes close, I don't think.
So, there you go. The drummer bunny from Caveat is the winner for the Castle Award.
And like Roddy Piper, just when you think you have all the answers, the Castle Award changes the questions.
It does.
And to close the video, here are the new awards for 2021. Awards we have never, to our knowledge anyway, given before. We're going to start with Tyler's selection, and this is an award that we each give a winner for. And Tyler's selection was basically best soundtrack / best composer / best music. This could be a single soundtrack. It could be a body of work on the year. So that's an angle that we're taking on this one. It's in general a best soundtrack award. So Tyler, take it away.
Alright, so originally I had it on a body of work for this artist. I can't remember his real name, but he goes by Junkie XL. He did the Snyder Cut, Godzilla vs. Kong, and I think Army of the Dead. So that's like a solid body of work.
Absolutely.
But I ended up giving it to a movie called Seance by an artist who goes by the name Sicker Man. Now, Seance is a horror movie, but what I love about the soundtrack is that it's kind of so different than horror movies. Like, yeah, it has that, it can build that dread, but then there's actually like some pleasant tunes, and it just feels original. You know, like Junkie XL was good, but his music kind of sounded somewhat similar all year.
Right.
And even though he was a front runner, but right at the end, I'm like, you know what? I'm switching it to Seance.
Interesting.
And on a side note, I guess, we had talked about giving this award like a few times.
Yeah.
Like throughout the years, we've been like, if we were given soundtrack of the year, we would give it to this movie. So now we finally put it into play.
There you go.
So my pick is Seance. Oh, but I do want to just throw out a couple honorable mentions. Wrath of Man, In the Earth, Pagan, Shiva Baby.
So my winner for this award, Best Soundtrack in 2021, and I'm going to be awarding this one on a body of work, I can't help but give it to Lin-Manuel Miranda. So Lin-Manuel Miranda was responsible, I believe, for all the music in Encanto, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, how that was kind of a nuclear bomb of a soundtrack this year. I think he was responsible for almost all the music in the Heights, which is, again, another foundational musical. I think he contributed 11 or 12 songs to the soundtrack of another animated movie this year called Vivo. He also contributed some music, or I think he might have even directed a movie called Tick Tick Boom.
Oh yeah, I never got to see that.
So I mean, like when you're talking about that's 4 movies whose soundtracks are all being considered as notable this year, and he was either singularly responsible for them or certainly contributed quite heavily to them. On body of work, I had to go in that direction. So Lin-Manuel Miranda gets my soundtrack of the year, I guess best soundtrack award in 2021.
I didn't even realize he did all that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I knew he was involved in these movies. Well, I didn't know Encanto, but I knew that he was involved in some of the other movies. But that's a good pick.
Yeah, I don't know if he was credited as one of the co-directors of Encanto. I think he might be, but I know he was certainly responsible for the vast majority of the music. My new award for 2021 is the Aha Moment Award for Best Plot Twist in a Movie. And this one, there was a very obvious choice for me this year, which made it very easy for me to be like, this is the one that I think I'm gonna really focus in on doing for 2021. So my award winner for the aha moment, best plot twist of 2021, is the fact that Mrs. Collins is Sandy in Last Night in Soho. The old lady, the room that the main character is renting from, or the room that she's renting from this old lady, that the old lady winds up being the Sandy character, spoilers, in Last Night in Soho. And the reason that this wins for me is that it was the one that the thought never crept into my mind for 1 second until they're having that scene in her little study.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it just flashes across an envelope.
Yes. Yeah.
That I was like, and just before it flashes across the envelope, for whatever reason, I just had the thought in my head. I was like, I wonder. And then it does that envelope scene, and you see it, but you only see it for half a second, and you go, I think that said Sandy. And then she takes the sip of tea, and then all of a sudden, it's immediately into the twist, and then you find out, and you're like, oh shit!
Yeah,
The fact that all happened in about a 20-second span was the plot twist that hit me the hardest and was the most impactful for me in 2021. So at that point when I saw that, it was undeniable that this was going to be my award for this year. So the fact that Mrs. Collins is Sandy in Last Night in Soho is my winner for the aha moment for best plot twist.
Look, it's a good plot twist that I kind of forgot about, but it's a great plot twist. However, it is not the best plot twist in a horror movie this year.
I thought you were going to say not the best plot twist in that movie. I was like, whoa, did I miss something?
Consensus on the movies is a different part. No, the best horror movie plot twist in my pick for the aha moment is in Malignant. Okay. I don't know if you got to see this, but here's why I watched the movie, because everyone was like, holy crap, the plot twist is insane. I heard some bad things about the movie, then I heard some good things. It was very conflicted, the reception. But I was like, you know what? If people are talking about the plot twist this much, I gotta check this out. It's a plot twist that works on two different levels, like a two-parter. Plot and genre. Because on a plot level, the twist of when you figure out why Gabriel and Madison are the way they are is awesome. As it is. It's just a really cool plot twist. And that would have been worth considering just by itself, because it was actually a plot twist that delivered. Like, I think it's pretty much accepted amongst people from what I've seen, that is like, no, the plot twist is great. Think what you want about the movie, but the plot twist is great. However, it's also like a twist on genre, because as soon as that twist happens, it essentially becomes an action movie. So it's like, so it works on two different levels. So it's like, I don't know that I really had any. I guess maybe I had a movie or two that I'm not going to mention that I considered based on different grounds, but I had to go with Malignant because there was no movie this year that I thought like, oh, the plot twist. It doesn't make or break the movie. I actually like the movie as a whole, but the plot twist is so good that it even beats Last Night in Soho, which is a great pick. So congrats, but you still lose.
I like it. I like it a lot. There you have it, folks. Our Miscellaneous Awards for the 2021 Justin and Tyler Movie Awards are now in the books. The movies we can't believe we loved, can't believe we hated, expected more, expected less, the aha moment for best plot twist, the best soundtrack, the Castle Award as always, and the movie that I just don't get it. The Miscellaneous Awards are in the books, and the next video that you are going to see begins the people portion of the 2021 Justin and Tyler Movie Awards, where we will give out our awards for Best Actors, Best Actresses, and Best Directors of 2021.